Canada, vast, polite, serene, a quiet companion to the thunderous bustle of its southern neighbour. But what if that quietness was more sinister than you thought? What if this was a realm where history, myth, and the uncanny blend, and where the boundary between reality and the supernatural grows thin? Welcome to Paranormal Canada, here on Things Visible and Invisible. Peter Sacco is a Canadian author, psychologist, paranormal researcher, and media personality, best known for his work exploring haunted places and paranormal phenomena, especially in the Niagara region of Canada. He created and is host of the Paranormal Profilers, and he joins me down the line from his home in Ontario. Peter, welcome to Things Visible and Invisible.
It's awesome to be here, Seán, and anybody listening. It's just a real honor to be a part of this. I love this.
Peter, America, the United States, I should say, has a great reputation for all sorts of paranormal phenomena, and Hollywood has fueled that for many a year. Canada sometimes is seen as kind of the more sensible friend, neighbour next door. Is there really much paranormal activity in Canada?
You know what, Seán? First of all, being a former criminal psychologist, profiler, and psychologist, I am a man of science. I'm a skeptic. I need to see stuff to believe stuff. However, with that said, both Canada and the United States have two, we're not as old and mature as, say, what you have in Europe, especially, you go to places like Greece, Italy, the UK, obviously, and then all the way to Egypt. Yeah, they have tremendous histories. Where we look at our histories, and if we were to look at what are the hotspots and what would they tie into with regards to paranormal activity, it would tie into areas where there have been tragedies. So the two areas in North America, or the two biggest hotspots in North America, would be in the Gettysburg area in the United States. And if you look at our area in Canada, which I'm more proficient in because I live in Niagara on the lake. So basically we were the descendants of the Brits. This is the Queen's territory here. So we had the War of 1812 here where the British fought the Americans in the War of 1812. And literally in my backyard, and I'm not saying this, figuratively or metaphorically, I'm saying it, how should we put it, specifically, there was a lot of murders, killings, everything going on here. From Americans slewing Canadian or Brits slewing Americans, and then we can get into the whole Native Americans that have lost their lives here, and not to even mention the Underground Railroad where, slaves were coming to Canada to get away from America. So we have a lot of tragedies, a lot of traumas. Therefore, it's a perfect ingredient for paranormal activity.
Now, you've alluded to your very interesting background, Peter. You've worked in criminal law, but you've also worked in psychology, which begs the question, you said at the start, you're a man of science. How did you get into the whole area of paranormal phenomena?
As a kid, I absolutely loved the TV series The Twilight Zone. So I saw it. I was a little kid. I didn't really understand it. But there were episodes that actually scared me. And then if you're from the 1970s, where I was, a kid, still really young, I fell in love with the show called Kolchak, the Night Stalker, starring Darren McGavin. So you look at that. And then, Seán, by the time I'm just trying to date myself here, I'm in university, loved the X-Files. That's when that came out. Absolutely loved it. Plus, at that time, I was a lead vocalist in a band, musician. So there was an artsy sort of side to me, but I was also writing. So I was doing a lot of writing of music, songs, but I was also writing at that point short stories and screenplays and do the sidebar stuff. And that's what kind of sustained me, Seán. And ironically, my career as a criminal psychologist, as a professor for 30 years, would coincide when I was working with police, where I learned of the most famous 1970 Poltergeist case in North America, which took place, and I met the police that were a part of that, and I have the 7 police reports. And this included, they were in there when a kid, this went on for 28 days. People from all around the world were trying to come and see this event, where this kid was on a bed floating, 2 feet off the ground, on a kitchen chair, literally hovering around the kitchen. There was 3 adults on a sofa while a crown attorney, which should, representing the government, was there to do an inquisition to see what the heck was going on. And the love seat, the sofa, started to levitate, where one woman literally jumped off screaming, and the crown attorney ran out of there. So I have the 7 of the documented police reports, the best ones. And I know no cop worth their weight of gold, silver, or frankincense or myrrh would put their name to anything like that with what they saw. And these guys were literally terrified and scared. They have since passed on because they retired a long time ago, and we recreated it. In fact, on my YouTube channel, Historical Niagara TV show, you can actually see it. It's called The Canadian Horror Story, which has been screening at film festivals around the world because it was real as The Exorcist was to William Peter Blatty, who wrote it. Mind you, it was, adapted to, that involved Linda Blair, a female that replaced the male who was originally a little boy that this was happening to.
So what year was that particular incident, and whereabouts in Canada?
1970 in St. Catharines, Ontario, which is literally 12-minute drive from me. And it happened in an apartment building where police went there because they thought it was a domestic. Things were being slammed, and the next thing you know, they've got a real poltergeist case.
So you were working in your profession as criminal psychologist, and suddenly you were bumping up against something which was something which you were interested in, but also something which was beyond the norm. Did this set off a sort of an interest then? Peter, would you say that was the genesis for you deciding that perhaps the world out there was a stranger place than even a criminal psychologist could imagine?
You know what it was, Seán? A lot of it had to do, I love history, especially the history around here. As I said, we are in the oldest part of Canada here because this is where a lot of the settlement and development happened. So I love the history. We have a lot of eye candy of historical ruins, landmarks, stuff still intact. And then what really brings these to life are the legends and the ghost stories. And when I did the TV series, I was literally trying to sell history, getting kids interested in history because it's like a lost interest, so to speak. We have a lot of immigrants coming to Canada. I wanted to teach them about Canadian history. And then there's just individuals that, I wouldn't really be interested in history. But all of a sudden, you put a ghost story to it. Like we have about 8 minutes from me, there's a 100-year-old tunnel. It's one of the most famous tunnels in Canada. And the reason it became famous, so to speak, it was in the movie The Dead Zone, the adaptation of Stephen King's book starring Christopher Walken. And then from that, all these legends started about a ghost of a girl that haunts that tunnel. And so when you put the two together, you can parcel it quite nicely and get people interested in history, but really good ghost stories that I miss because as a kid, being in Boy Scouts, you like these campfire tales. And that's what these are, Seán. History with campfire tales. However, there's, where they say there's smoke, there's fire, pun intended, with the campfire tale. There is some stuff in a lot of the stuff I looked at.
Well, let's unpack some of that, Peter, because I am your guest in Canada. You're showing me around on this sort of ghostly paranormal travelogue of your country. Where would you take me first of all? Somewhere that has a great story, but also something which is particularly spooky, say.
I would probably take you to a Breckenridge old house that is in my neck of the woods. The house, I don't want to get it wrong. It's at least 150 years old, if not more. So I would hear stories of this. So somebody had once given me a picture of the home. And at that time, when I was working in criminal psychology, a dear friend of mine who was the real deal, she was a psychic medium profiler. I was skeptic when I first met her, but we became best friends all the way up to the time she passed away really young. And she at one point was working with major police organizations, even Interpol. She had gotten contacted. She was the real deal, Sean. She blew the doors off me. So yeah, she literally undressed me with a reading once where I thought, how the heck could you know this? So it all started when I showed her a picture of this home that somebody had given me, and I asked her what she thought of it. She says, my dear friend, for as long as you live on this earth, I never want you to set foot on that property. And I go, why? She goes, because there's a lot of bad things that went on there. So as the story unfolds, we were filming the first episode of what was at the time Niagara's Most Haunted. And we were down in the area filming the gazebo, which was used in Stephen King's movie, The Dead Zone. We went to get coffees, and the ladies in there going, oh, guys, where are you from? What are you guys doing? We told them, and they go, have you ever seen that house? And they started to proceed to tell us about this house that they broke in when they were in their early 20s because it's been abandoned. And they went into the basement. They brought a Ouija board. They were going to try to do some sort of contact or seance. And they said the Ouija board went up in flames within 10 minutes. And they got the heck out of there. What had happened, Sean, is much like the Amityville story. Owners left this place in the middle of the night and never went back about 50 years ago. And when we were filming Niagara's Most Haunted, I had a fellow from New York City that is now transplanted down here, and he has a show called Paranormal. And he's a quote-unquote a psychic medium. So I decided to take him to the house, not tell him a thing about it, and see what he would get in terms of, what he would pick up on. He came back to the van about 20 minutes later, and he started to proceed to tell me that this was a juvenile home at one point. One juvenile had killed another one, and he hung himself in the stairwell. Interestingly, I never told him that previously another psychic had said that somebody hung themselves in there and that there was deaths in there. When we fast forward, when we started doing the paranormal profilers, I brought folks that are paranormal investigators. They've got ovuluses, K meters, and a ghost box, spirit box. And they started walking by this derelict house, because it is derelict, it's empty, and it's all boarded up. And as they were going on the sidewalk, Sean, they were able to get imaging, heat imaging, so to speak. There was something following us as we walked each way on the sidewalk. And the woman that's very highly regarded, in fact, I believe she's met and worked with Lorraine Warren from the Warrens, the Conjuring people. She started to communicate with this thing through the ovilus, and she kept asking, what is this? What are you? And all of a sudden on there came demon. So this, my friend, would be the place I would take you to, because it has a very profound history of legend, but where they say there's smoke, there's fire. Nobody has lived in this place for now going 50 years. I think it is at least. And it has gone up for sale, but it never sells. And nobody knows what the heck is up with this place. However, people have reported psychics, mediums going by there that can see stuff. In fact, one fellow I spoke to was a dowser. And he says you can see, if you can see through the veil into the other side, or whatever you want to see through the universal ether, you can see these spirits that are not very nice dangling out of the windows, mocking you as you go by.
Wow. So, this is a common trope. I don't know if you've experienced this in your work, Peter, but we've had people on from other parts of North America who have done similar kind of work as you're doing. And they say that inevitably children's homes, psychiatric institutions, old hospitals, prisons, these are places which inevitably create psychic disturbance of some sort. Is that your experience?
Once again, that's how it has always been explained to me. When I taught a course, that's how I wound up meeting that psychic medium that was doing police investigations, that I worked cases with her. I did the psychological profile, and she did the psychic profile, and we'd actually solve cases rather fast. But she had taught me a fair bit about that, Sean. And when I taught the course in Understanding the Paranormal, that's what the course was, a course in parapsychology, we looked at the fact that, and nobody knows unless you've gone to the other side and come back. You really don't know. So in some ways you're guessing. But to the best of my abilities, where there's a trauma or a sudden tragedy, supposedly an individual is snapped away so fast that they've left energy, residual energy or whatever, and this hence is an apparition or something that is going on there. Now, to go to the other side, the question I could pose to you. So after I did my postdoc insight, I decided I wanted to do a master's degree in theology. I'm a very strong Christian man, and I always liked biblical prophecies and miracles. So I decided to look at that. When I did my paper, I had to do a thesis for it, Seán. I did it on mental health illness or mental illness versus demonic possession. So here's the question for you or anybody, which would all boil down to. In medieval times, individuals, they actually, they used tree finding where they would smash the person in the forehead to try to release the spirit. They did bloodletting, where they would cut the person's throat, do different things like that. And, they would bleed or get rid of the spirit because that's where they believed it was. But then as modern medicine came around, you go back to Freud around that time in psychology, where he was really the brains of it, or Braid before him, you would see then, okay, what we thought was medieval mental illness or demonic possession was really mental illness. So now we're in our time period where no matter what it is, Seán, it's got to be a mental illness. It's got to be a mental illness. Because to think it's demonic or something evil like that, you're crazy to think that. And if you were to say that in a ward, let's say a mental health ward or a psychiatrist, a psychiatrist isn't going to repeat that, or a psychologist, they would look as, okay, you're certifiable. Go back to the Middle Ages where you came from. So the question then becomes, what could it be a possibility that it is one or the other in certain circumstances? But is it possible that becoming possessed or having a demon and the demonic entity close to you or in you is what is leading to the mental health disorder? I've taught addiction studies for many, many years at a university. And when we look at treatment of addictions and assessment of addictions, Seán, we look at the variables that lead to an addiction. And another word for liquor or alcohol is spirit. So literally when somebody becomes drunken, and even biblically, if you look at it, they say, on the good side, where people are filled with the Holy Spirit, they're drunken with the Spirit. Well, in this other case, they're drunken with the alcohol, which is a spirit that literally takes them over and can destroy their life. And if you look at addictions, if you don't get help with it, it will destroy your life and those around you. So the question then becomes, is it really different from a demonic entity? Or is it all 100% mental health? And we don't have that veil that we can look through to totally say it's one or the other, because I've spoken to clients of mine back in the day when I was, in the field. And I had one fellow that came over from Romania, and I met him. He was a student of mine, and he pulled me aside one day and he goes, I got to tell you, he goes, when I first came over to North America, I was in New York City. And he goes, I had already been an addict. And then he goes, crack was just kind of coming out. And he goes, but coke, if I could get my hands on cocaine, that's what I would do. And I remember him telling me, Seán, he goes, Peter, I would beg for food on street corners and nobody would give me a slice of bread, nothing, not even a candy or a donut. And he goes, but I would ask people, and sometimes I wouldn't even ask people. I would sit there on the side of a street in New York City and somebody would throw me a dime bag of cocaine. And so you look at, and he goes, I'm telling you, my friend, Peter, really there is a demon, there is a devil. And I know because he was telling me he shook hands with this thing.
Well, let me ask you about that, Peter, because you've set out a very, very interesting scenario there. There are people who would perhaps suggest that the world you're involved in, that of paranormal investigation, is best left well alone. That it's a dangerous world, and you've just been alluding to certain forces within it. Do you, first of all, have you had experiences where your own safety has been compromised or potentially compromised? But also, is it something where sometimes after you've been in one of these experiences or one of these sites that you actually think this is something not for the foolhardy, not for the faint of heart, and maybe not for somebody who really understands the nature of the evil that you could be bringing towards you?
The best analogy I can kind of give with my experiences was it would be like an individual. And these were the real paranormal investigators that I had on my show. And some of them are on big time TV series still that are still kicking around on major networks. And the analogy I would give you, Seán, it's like an individual that if you go across the street where I live, we have an escarpment. My house is literally built on the side of an escarpment. So when I take the dogs down, I got to go down a hill and then come back up the hill. It's always easier going down and coming back up, especially we have like a ton of snow out there. It's ridiculous. There's about about 30 centimeters of snow. Trudging up is hard. So, but let's say I trudge up and then I say, you know what? I think I'm good at this because I do it all the time. I'm ready to climb Mount Everest. Therefore, I'm going to go try climb Mount Everest. You're going to probably find me frozen up there dead or whatever at some point when the St. Bernard comes around there with the bottle of booze to save me. With that said, this is the same thing I've seen where I've had folks come on as guest investigators when we had the show and others that wanted to try stuff. So they're trying the K-meter, they want to carry the obelisk, they want to speak to something or whatever. And it's like, you don't know what you're talking to because whatever it is that's hiding, you think it's going to reveal itself as, I'm an evil demonic entity that you would meet at the crossroads, you would sell your soul to, and I'm going to destroy your life at some point. Or is it going to come to you as, I'm your sweet, dear great-great-grandmother, and I want to tell you all these wonderful things and show you. So, yes, I had a very negative experience, which eventually I stopped the show because of it. It happened more than one. After the first time it happened, then it kind of happened the second time. And I told my crew and everybody, I'm done. I'm only in this because I enjoy the camaraderie of the team. I like the historical stories, and the ghost stories are really cool too. So we went to, quote unquote, a 200-year-old old B&B, a very famous one. The individuals who had bought it, after they had bought it, they had to get some rewiring done. And they had somebody from TV cable at that time and also telephone come in there. And both of these gentlemen ran out. They never finished their job. They left. So there was a lot of shenanigans going on there. When they allowed a tenant to still live in the attic of this place because they had an agreement with the previous owner, so they honored it. When this fellow left, they tore up everything up there because they were going to redo it to create it for another guest space. Underneath the rug was a giant pentagram with a whole bunch of occult stuff. Well, let's fast forward. I had brought a woman that I would eventually bring on the show. I just met her at a function because we were short, quote unquote, the psychic medium of the show. He had taken ill and couldn't do it. He had pneumonia and he was going to be away. So this woman said, hey, let me try or whatever and test me. So I brought her there that night and brought her around the house. And I said, she's telling me somebody hung themselves in this one closet. I can see the body swaying back and forth. It looks like a maid, and it happened over 100 years ago. And I said, for the love of heaven and earth, please do not tell the owner that when we get down there, because the owner wanted to know what she picked up. So she says, okay, Peter, I promise I won't. I go, we're down there, Seán, and the owner starts talking about some of the scary stuff that's going on. This woman that I had brought on couldn't help herself. She said, did somebody ever commit? I saw a body hanging in a closet, swinging back and forth. And the owner of this home, Seán, looked 100 shades of white. She goes, how could you possibly know? Over 100 years ago, there was a maid that was having an affair with the husband while the wife was pregnant. And when he cut it off with her, rather than her leave the house, she went into her closet and hung herself. So she goes, you couldn't have possibly known. So we eventually filmed in this house. I brought 12. There was 12 people that day in this home. And I had a guest like I normally do, and he's a decorated Canadian Army captain. And he came on. While we were in this house, Seán, 12 of us were in this giant room. It would have been the dining room area as well as a sitting room, like a living room area. We're taping. We have 3 cameras going, and we all heard simultaneously an auditory voice fill the room that said, okay, when, quote unquote, the 2 paranormal investigators that were speaking through a spirit box to this thing decided it didn't need the spirit box, and it just filled the room with its voice. I almost fell out of my chair, and I thought, wow. Within 10 minutes after that, the owner's husband looked like he was starting to have what looked like a massive panic attack, potential heart attack, where they had to tend to him. But before that happened, Sean, the individuals using the spirit box, I saw what looked like a giant white, it was a cross between a giant spider / scorpion that would have, massive, run up the wall and disappeared in through the ceiling. And that's when this heart attack, panic attack things started to happen, where they had to basically calm him down. Like, it was a fiasco. After that happened, Sean, at the time I was single, I lived alone. I wasn't with my wife yet. I felt all night something was standing in my bedroom door watching me, and at certain points it was standing beside the side of my bed. It was the creepiest night experience I've ever had. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, dude, you're letting this go to your head. You're psyching yourself out, and you're the psychologist. Snap out of it. The feeling persisted the next day. The next night I was kind of feeling weirded out a bit, but it wasn't as bad, but it was still weird. I finally said, okay, I'm going to reach out to the crew. And I finally put it out there. Has anybody had any bad experience since we shot at this mansion, this B&B? And it started to pour out. People said, yeah, I felt like something followed me home. In fact, one of the fellows that was using the ghost box, he installs the lines for Bell Telephone, and he was doing it up in Toronto later that night. He said, Peter, something was following me all night, and I could see its shadow on the ground. But the problem is there was no light to cast a shadow. This thing was following him around. So we had a debriefing. We got back. And then what I was told, Sean, is when that thing ran up the wall, and before this guy had this panic attack, which could have led to a potential heart attack, the co-owner of the home, a shadow figure ran across the other wall. And I'm a naive person. Like, I'm not very well versed. I go, okay, I've heard of shadow figures. Like, what are we talking about here? And the woman that is very strong in the paranormal, that has her own radio show, she's very well known in Canada. She says, Peter, those are demonic entities. So it was at that point where I just thought, and furthermore, Sean, people's lives started to go to crap after that. Like, just stupid things started happening with no explanation. You can go, it's a coincidence. Personally, as a Christian, I believe there are no coincidences. There's God winks, where he sets things into place. But these other things were being caused by something that was not godly. It was something not very good. And I was the most uneasiest I had ever felt in my life in a very long time, without anything like, okay, I'm switching jobs, I'm moving homes, whatever. Other people were feeling the same. And then we kind of had something about 2 years later, similar to that, where there was something seedy going on there, where a horse had been ripped apart during the night in a barn by something that had the size of paws of like a giant puma, a panther, or a lion or something. And the people in my crew were investigating, and they said, no, this is a shapeshifter. It's something worse. And it connected a story to a woman I met that she had asked if I would help her by removing a trauma from her. She through hypnosis, which I agreed to do as a favor to this woman from the Canadian Paranormal Investigator. And what she told me, that at her house, one night, this thing came to the door, chased her son, who's in his 20s, into the house. They locked the door, and this thing was sniffing at the top of the door. And it was on 2 legs, and it looked like some giant wolf man, dog man, or something that was horrible, hideous, or whatever. And I'm just thinking, okay, to each his own. I don't have really any background in that or understand that, but I'll take her at her word. That house, ironically, was connected to this ranch where we had been filming it. And I just thought, okay, this is hitting too close to home. I'm out of here. And, that's where I basically made the decision. This isn't fun anymore, because, like you say, Sean, it's like weekend warriors that are going out. You play paintball or airsoft gun, but you decide, hey, I'm going to go and start shooting with mercenaries and play with real bullets. No, Absolutely. That's not what you do.
Absolutely. Peter, this is absolutely fascinating. I'm absolutely riveted by your storytelling. I hope you'll come on again, but for now I'm afraid that this is the end of our time together. Tell people where they can find out more about you and where they can follow you online.
Yeah, you can find me at my website, www.peterandrewsacco.com. In fact, there's free downloads. In fact, there's free downloads of haunted books. You might be interested in paranormal stuff. And my YouTube channel that actually has videos of this stuff and movies on Historical Niagara TV show. Thank you so much, Seán.
Peter, for now, thank you so much for coming on Things Visible and Invisible.
See you later.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of Things Visible and Invisible. We're dedicated to uncovering phenomena that challenge our understanding of reality, from ancient enigmas and paranormal encounters to scientific anomalies and forgotten histories. If you enjoyed this journey into the mysterious and unexplained, please consider subscribing to our channel and hitting the notification bell to stay updated on future explorations. Have a personal experience or story that aligns with our investigations? We'd love to hear from you. Visit our website at tvi.show and reach out through our contact form. While we can't feature every submission, we review them all, and your story might be featured in an upcoming episode. To support our continued investigations, please consider becoming a Patreon supporter or channel member. Your contributions make these explorations possible and give you access to exclusive content, early releases, and monthly behind-the-scenes discussions with our team. Don't forget to check out our merch store. We've got everything from TVI-branded t-shirts and hoodies to stickers and coffee mugs, perfect for showing your support while keeping the mysteries close. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time as we continue to explore the things visible and invisible.